Hey, Petty fans, welcome to episode 5 of the Richard Petty Motorsports Podcast, presented by Petty's Garage.
Presented by Petty's Garage. Is it number 5? I'm losing count. I'm losing count already.
We're already at 5.
Dang.
So I think we're doing pretty good so far.
I hope so. Well, the problem is I keep a look on the subscribers, and it's trending up. So I need everybody
going the right direction.
It's trending up, but it's not really going there as fast as Richard Petty would like it. So please, everybody, tell your friends, tell your family, Richard Petty Motorsports Podcast.
Check it out.
It's where it's at.
We tell old racing stories. What could be better than that?
There's nothing better than having old racers on here, old crew chiefs. Speaking of crew chiefs.
True. We got a really special guest today. We have Chris Hussey, who is currently heading things up over here at Petty's Garage, but spent a number of years in the sport, crew chief for some guys you know, and also his father-in-law is Dale Inman, so, there's that too.
Yeah. Cool guy. Really
Definitely
cool guy. Soft-spoken, but a lot of great stories. Extremely intelligent.
Definitely.
Really good pod. Can we call it a pod? I don't like calling it a pod.
Episode.
Really good episode.
Before we get into Chris, though, I got to mention, this is a very big week in our world. Sunday is the Daytona 500, and Eric Jones will get behind the wheel at number 43 for the first time in a points-paying race. He'll have Armor All on the car. Got a nice bright orange, gray, white scheme. Looks really good.
Looking hot rod.
Definitely. So be sure to tune in on Sunday. Cheer for Eric. Hopefully we get the trophy at the end of the day. But right now, here's Chris.
My name is Chris Hussey. I grew up in Asheboro, North Carolina, and I'm the operations manager at Petty's Garage.
That's where we're sitting right now, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So, Chris, this show, the past few episodes, we've been presented by Petty's Garage. So I thought it would be good to start by telling those listening what you guys are working on right now, what you got going on, and kind of what you do on a day-to-day basis.
We have several projects going on. We have aftermarket performance. We keep 4 to 5 projects going in that. We have restoration, where we've got 5 more projects going there. We have the engine shop, where we're doing multiple engine builds for a lot of different vendors and aftermarket retailers, as well as the on-site jobs. And then, of course, we have our paint shop, where that supports everything here. It supports aftermarket performance, restoration, and we also do a little collision work on the side.
Yeah, pretty much full-service speed shop, start to finish. Yeah. Did you think when you took that position you'd end up on a podcast with 2 knuckleheads like us, or
no,
is this kind of
the object of this position was stay below the fold in the newspaper. That's kind of the way I like to look at it, just get out of the spotlight.
Well, so you say get out of the spotlight. I'm assuming at one time you're probably in it,
That's in the eyes of the beholder. But there was a time in my life that, I got a little bit of TV time and did some things to make Mom proud.
So from Asheboro originally, where did your career in racing start?
My dad was a huge race fan. So we went to Caraway Speedway every Saturday night my entire childhood. And then the Busch Series started, and we ventured out, started going to South Boston, Virginia, and Hickory, North Carolina, and the other short tracks. And following the Busch Series, we had our local heroes. We had Sam Art out of Asheboro, North Carolina. I went to school with Sam's kids. Oh, cool. Knew that whole group. Thomas Brothers Country Ham, who owned the car, was located in Asheboro, and it just kind of evolved. Super good friends with the Hensley family out of Martinsville, because they raced Caraway every single weekend, and got to be real good friends with them. Would go to Martinsville, and they'd let me sleep on their couch and stuff like that after I turned 16 and could start driving to the races. Mm-hmm. But really, after school, I played baseball, but other than baseball, after school, I would go to the Thomas Brothers shop every single evening, and they would let me do whatever and run parts and do this and do that, and just kind of got my foot in the door with that, just being local. And it's one of those odd things. I certainly didn't understand when my kids grew up that at 12 years old I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to work on race cars, I wanted to change tires, and I wanted to be a crew chief one day. And nothing else mattered. Nothing stood in that way. I knew that's what I wanted to do, regardless of what I had to do to get there.
That's interesting you say that. It sounds similar, not the same exact path that Philippe had that we talked to a couple weeks ago, but when you hear his story, it's a very similar path of I knew that's what I wanted to do. I just had to find somebody who let me get my foot in the door, and then I was off to the races. No pun intended, right?
Right. For and I always say it was easy for me because I lived right here in it. Going to school in Randolph County, at your middle school basketball game, Richard Petty would be there campaigning for a Randolph County commissioner. You'd go to the movie theater on Wednesday night and see he and Linda there watching a movie.
Oh,
You'd
wow.
see him at the steakhouse, and people, and to this day, don't get me wrong, I'm still in awe of Richard Petty, but people that are in such awe, I saw him my whole life. You saw him just like everybody else, and like I said, just living here in this area, it was easy. Often, I tell some of these young guys that moved here. I had a real good friend moved here from upstate New York, and people moved here from Maine and Vermont. People moved here from Texas with $400 in their pocket and all their clothes in the front seat of their car. I don't know if I would have taken that risk, but for me it was easy. I started working on race cars and lived at home with my mom, and there was no risk whatsoever if it didn't work out. But just like Philippe, a lot of people have that dream. Fortunately for me, it was a lot easier than some.
Yeah, I know for me, I'm from Virginia originally. I grew up in a household with my dad who was a giant Petty fan, but I didn't have that side of things where you see him around town or anything, and I knew about the same age that you said, 12 years old, I knew I wanted to design cars when I got older, but I never thought that I would work for the guy that my dad idolized his whole life, and if he wouldn't have convinced me that it was even a possibility, I can guarantee you I'd never taken the chance to come down here. But that's, I think looking at our conversation with Philippe and what you're saying, if you want to be in racing and you know that's what you're meant to do, go for it. And if you don't feel that you're meant to do it, maybe it's, I think it's kind of going to be in your blood. Right?
Yes, absolutely. As I said, I was a huge North Carolina State fan growing up, and I had a lot of people pointing me in that direction. Worked really hard in school to have good grades, and you need to go to college. You need to go to college. And at the time when it come time to graduate, there was, I applied at North Carolina State, mechanical engineering, Western Carolina, UNC Charlotte, got accepted at all those places and chose racing because there were no engineers in racing. That didn't help you get it. Probably hurt you if as an engineer, because nobody liked engineers. They come in and knew it all and didn't have any experience. So, I often say, what about your education? Do you regret not furthering your education? And I said, my education started when I was sneaking in the pits at 12 years old.
Right.
Every Saturday night. That was my education to do that.
It's funny, the script is kind of flipped now in regards to engineering. It's that's definitely where we've moved to, I know.
Yes.
So you said the Thomas Brothers Country Ham, was that a sponsor on the car too?
They actually owned the car. Mr. Howard Thomas, he owned the Thomas Brothers Ham plant in Asheboro, and they had a race car shop on the side. And he was a huge, he started owning race cars. He didn't actually his name was on the car, but he owned race cars since 1970. And he stayed owning race cars through 1988. But he was just a huge race fan. He would go and he owned the cars and spent an enormous amount of money on them, and he would buy a ticket and sit in the stands. He didn't come in the infield or anything. And he supported racing for a long, long time, just being a race fan. And he didn't like the big time auto racing. And he stayed in it long enough to win a couple of Busch Grand National championships and several wins. And then it just got so big that he could have continued to afford it, but he just didn't like the big showboat type racing. He liked the Saturday night type racing and just being a race fan. But yeah, that was Mr. Thomas. He was outstanding.
What was the next rung up for you then after?
The next rung up for me was Highline Racing, which was Busch Grand National again, and it was kind of a spin-off of I say it was a spin-off of Stavola Brothers. It was beside a Stavola Brothers shop in Harrisburg. And the team Highline Racing was actually owned by Felix Sabatis and Ted Conder. And it was a Busch Grand National team. Felix had his cup team. He and Ted were real good friends and both owned their own businesses, obviously. And so that was next in line after that. And once again, tire changer mechanic, some awfully good people that was very good to me in that to give me that opportunity. But once again, it opened some doors. I met some really, really neat people, certainly in the Charlotte area. More to the cup side than just living here in Asheboro. And I didn't move, but that was next, yeah.
Speaking of meeting people, how did you meet Dale Inman?
Through his daughter.
Go on.
No, actually, I'd met Dale before then. I'd come up here when I said I was a parts runner at Thomas Brothers. If we needed an oil line fitting, run up level cross and get one. So they'd send me up here, and I'd come in and find Dale, and he'd send me to Wade Thornburg, and Wade would take me wherever I needed to be. I brought some wheels up here one time to be Magnaflux and stuff like that. But I did go, and when I say out of school, I did go to Randolph Community College. I took a machinist course, and that's where I met my wife to be, Tina. And I knew who Tina was through athletics. We both played different sports in school. She played all the sports. I played baseball mainly. But I knew who she was just because the girls always played before the boys and that kind of thing in basketball. And so anyway, she was at Randolph Community College, and I met her there, and we started talking. And obviously, I knew who her dad was, but anyway, one thing led to another. We eventually got married. And she got me at a low moment, and we got married, and it's all history. 31 years ago. I
guess this is what it took 6-7 episodes to get our first love story.
Yeah, first of many, I'm sure. Yeah. So since we're on that topic now, I want to know what it was like the first time you showed up to pick up Dale Emmons' daughter to take her out on a date. Did he give you the old run around?
Was he cleaning his gun?
No, he don't like guns. He doesn't believe in guns, so he doesn't have any guns. Actually, boy, we can get deep in the woods on this. So, it was Martinsville.
That's what we're here for.
So it was 1985, September 1985, and that's when we met. We met on a Wednesday, and she said, "What are you doing tomorrow night?" And I said, "Why?" She said, "There's a softball game." The Winston Cup Racing Wives Auxiliary was a group of racing wives and mechanics wives, and they were going to play a benefit softball game in Martinsville, Virginia, kind of as a promo thing. And Panel Knitting was sponsoring it, and she said, "We don't know how to get there, and Daddy don't want to go. Will you take us?" Sure. So I
set
drive
up pretty well right there.
Our first date, I drive up to Level Cross, and I get in a car with 5 women, and it was Linda and Tina and her mother and a couple other ladies, and I drive them to Martinsville, and they play the softball game and come back home. But Dale was there. He was there that afternoon. But the ironic thing is that was the Wednesday after Dale had been let go from Hagen Racing because they had announced that they were going to open Petty Enterprises back up for the 86 season.
Oh, okay.
So Dale had just been let go, and he had already come over here and started work and started painting this floor red out here again, a new coat of red. And the thing I remember is he had red paint all over him. And really, that was the first time I met Dale at his home, as he had red paint all over him, and I was taking the women to a softball game.
Wow.
That's a pretty cool story.
Yeah. I've heard that your wife can hit a softball further than 99% of the population.
Maybe one day. She could have, but no longer. Yeah, we're out of that stage, I think. But no, she was an outstanding athlete. Like I said, she played every sport, and there's not a bigger competitor on the face of the earth other than maybe her mother. And they are huge competitors, and they will know, even to this day, no matter what it is, it's about winning to them. So,
interesting. Did you get a chance to listen to our podcast with Dale 2 weeks ago?
Portions of it.
I'm wondering if there are any, if there are any stories that he told then, or stories that you have that your version and Dale's version might not line up.
No, you got to understand. I've heard most of them a lot of times,
right?
And it's easy, I know, for him to get them mixed up. But for some of them, I did live it, and I was there. And the one I heard is he was talking about driving the race car down the road here testing before they went to Sears Point. But in the podcast, Dale said Riverside.
Okay.
Now, he did drive the car to Riverside one time for Lee's race, but the part he was talking about with Jeff Craven to drive down to the bridge here and turn around, and then somebody called the police and said, "Hey, can you believe somebody's driving a race car out here?" That was the only mess up there is he said Riverside, and it was actually Sears Point because Jeff Craven never went to Riverside.
Gotcha. Well, they're both road courses in California.
Yeah,
we'll give him a pass.
That's right. That's right. I hope I'm that sharp when I'm that age.
Absolutely. Let's go and kind of move past, go back to your racing career. I want to know how did you go from tire changer, mechanic, and then into the crew chief role? What was your first crew chief position?
First crew chief position was was with Bill Davis Racing, 1994. I had been with the Labonte family a couple of years on their Busch Grand National operation, and we won the Busch Grand National Championship in 1991 with Bobby and his family's deal. It was we had 4 employees, and his dad, an incredible influence on my life, was Mr. Bob Labonte, and we won Busch Grand National Championship. And as always, success breeds opportunities, and so they were starting the second team at Roush Racing in Liberty, and for Wally Diamondback in the 16 car. And I was hired to go over there. Steve Mill hired me to go over there and be part of that new team. And lo and behold, in my first week there, several of the guys on the 6 car with Mark Martin decided they wanted to do something else and quit. So Steve moved me over to the 6 and was a tire changer there, become the car chief. And then we had an outstanding year in 1993. We won 4 races in a row, won 5 total. The Busch Grand National car, we pitted it on Saturday. I think Mark won 9 races that year, so we won about 14 races. And so
that's good times right there.
Yeah, that was fun, and didn't appreciate it at the time. But looking back, 4 races in a row, that's only been done a couple of times, and that was fun to be a part of it. And like I said, things just clicked because everybody thinks you're cheating or you got a trick, and things clicked. But anyway, that bred opportunity. Had become real good friends over the years, even back to the Labonte days with Bill Davis, and he was doing his Busch Grand National thing, and he had went cup racing in '93, and he knew that Bobby Labonte and I were good friends, and he wanted to do something different with his team for '94 for the cup thing, so he offered me the position there to be the cup crew chief, and that was my first crew chief position.
Okay, who was the driver?
Bobby Labonte.
Okay, that's right. Was it a Maxwell House car?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Gotcha. And then you also, we were talking before we started recording, you and Philippe, our previous guests, were both Ward Burton crew chiefs.
Absolutely.
So back-to-back Ward Burton crew chiefs for at least a little bit, right?
Yeah.
We asked Philippe what radio comms was like. I'll follow up and ask you the same question. What do you remember radio communications being like with Ward?
I guess we were more from the same geological location. We could understand each other.
Right.
I'll say that. And if you want to call it redneck, okay, we was both rednecks. But no, Ward is an outstanding person. Our communication was good. I can't say enough nice things about Ward. We had some outstanding races. Won his first cup race together at Rockingham in 1995, so that will always be a big memory. And
yeah, definitely.
And like I said, we had some success. We had a lot of bad luck. We had some engine issues. There was times that we were top 10 in points, and then we'd run on a string of bad luck with some broken engines, and things would fall apart. And a lot of times bad luck messes up relationships, and it hurt our working relationship. But at the end of the day, we all remained friends. Bill Davis, gosh, I love him and his wife Gail to death. There's nobody that was better to me during my career than those two. Saw them both last February at the Hall of Fame induction. They were there for Bobby's deal, and got to spend some time with them. And really good people. They were very nice to me.
I've heard others say the same thing about them too.
Yeah.
How did you end up back here at Petty's? I guess, was that your first stint at Petty's after the Bill Davis deal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Kind of got to the point, like I said, me and Ward wasn't on the same page much anymore, and I went in and talked to Bill one day. I said, look, you need to do something different, and I know the sponsorship's tied to the driver, and
yep.
I said, honestly, I need to be at home. I need to be at home with my kids. My kids were starting, I guess they were 3 and 5. I was starting to miss T-ball games and that kind of thing, and felt like I had pulled my time, and I said, I just need to get off the road and do something different. So I'm basically giving you an easy choice to make here, and I'll do something different. So I shopped around a little bit, talked to Robbie Loomis over here, and said, hey, I'm not smart enough to do anything else, so I got to stay in racing somehow, but I just don't want to go all the time. And that was right when the shock, when we were revalving and building our own shocks, and I'd kind of gotten into that as a crew chief because that's just what you did. And Robbie was doing his own, and they were wanting to bring the 44 team with Kyle back here in 99. So worked out a deal with Robbie, and Robbie wanted me to be the spotter because Dale was going to retire, and Dale had been spotting and for John Andretti, And Dale retired at the end of the 98 season. I started work here and was going to be the spotter, build the shocks, and just travel to the race on race day.
Okay.
And Robbie made that deal happen, and that was good, and it was great. We won at Martinsville, and we had some really good races together. Once again, new relationships, new friends with the Andretti family.
So you're on the 43 Cup car at this point,
yes,
right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. Still went to all the tests. We did a lot of testing back then. Still went to a lot of tests, but as far as I was at the T-ball games on Saturday, and that was all good. And I'd fly out early Sunday morning and get home on Sunday night, and that worked out really, really good for me.
That's a nice arrangement.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so did you get touted at that point to pair up with Adam when he came along?
Well, that was my deal. I'm off the road. Don't want to go anymore. Don't want to be a crew chief. Don't want the responsibility. I just it's time to settle down a little bit. So we get to mid-season of 99, and Adam was doing good. He'd started off really, really good in the Busch Series, and they'd kind of hit a rut, and as Kyle would say, they kind of flattened off. And he said, before they start going downhill, he said, I want to do something different. I want to get them some help and just some confidence in there. So some reason Adam must have liked the way I talked, because we was always carrying on here at the shop. He was here about every day, and so I started going with him mid-season in July with the Busch Grand National car, and started spotting for him. So I'd spot for him on Saturday and spot for John on Sunday. And
oh, wow.
Sometimes it was Colorado on Saturday and Pocono, Pennsylvania on Sunday. And so that was a
so now you're full on back on the road, right?
Oh yeah. We landed in Greensboro, I think, at 4:00 in the morning, and the petty plane was leaving at 5. So I just slept for an hour in my car and then got on a different airplane and flew to Pocono. So, but I sit here and I'm going against everything I said I wanted to do. But honestly, it was for Adam. It was all about Adam. Yeah. And me and my wife and my family, we discussed it, and she said, "Hey, I'll support you with whatever you want to do." And so for the last half of the year, I went to every race with Adam. Spotted every race, and then that's when the whole Dodge thing was talking about coming back at some point. You had the Sprint sponsorship was coming, and a lot of big opportunities for a very special young man, and obviously a huge racing family. Yeah, and Adam, he kept throwing all his eggs in one basket, and of course he had his mother coming and talking to me and everybody, and it's like, okay, you talked me into it. But let me make it clear, this is for Adam. Right. This isn't for Chris. This isn't for anybody. It's for Adam, and because just what a super young man he was, and that's the reason I did it. That's
awesome. I just was looking at a photo you posted to one of your social channels. That was a letter that he wrote. Talking about, hold on, let me pull it up, because the last line got me. I thought it was pretty good. It said, "Chris, I need these for qualifying at Talladega," and then he said, "P.S. Cheat them up as much as you can. Bumpier the better." Bumpier the better. Yeah, that's when we was loading up the rear shocks with a rebound for qualifying to hold the back end of the car down, and he would bring his shocks up here. That's when I was working for the 43, 100%, and he would bring them up here and drop them off, and he'd say, "Build me a set." And so I'd build him something, and he'd cheat them up as much as he can. But I found that not long ago in my toolbox, and I have no idea why I kept it, but I'm glad I did. That's awesome. Did you, have any when I was talking to Dale, I phrased it as innovations, and he didn't want to give away any trade secrets. But, is there anything that comes to mind that you figured out in your time as a crew chief or working on race cars? You're like, man, that was pretty slick the way he came up with that. Yeah, you can probably Google some of that and find it, because
I was going to say you're out $100 for something, weren't you?
Yeah. The owner was out $35,000. There's some photos of that stuff too. But I guess the most proud thing is I never got caught. I always got told on, which is typically the thing in NASCAR. I say they never catch anything. You get ratted out, and you get told on by a disgruntled former employee or somebody like that. And to me, that's not a real racer. A real racer is if you learn about it, then you go and you figure out how to beat them. And you capitalize with that and make it better.
Yeah.
Right.
But we all hold that pretty close to our vest. But I guess I could sit here and rattle off some things that wouldn't mean anything to anybody. But we basically what I always said is I try to surround myself with people smarter than me, and they make me look good. Right. So that's what we did.
Yeah. Again, just like what we were going back to last time with Philippe, he said it's all about the people.
It is.
And that seems to reign true in racing as well.
Yeah, I tell the story, I grew up that the harder you work, the more success you got. And then when you get to the cup level, where instead of 3 or 4 employees like we had in the Busch Series, and you got 30 employees then, and of course then it exploded and went to 500 employees. But, I was at Bill Davis's one night at 8 o'clock working all by myself, and I realized I can't do this by myself. And I realized then I had to learn to work people and to become a manager and a people manager. And so even to this day, I work really, really hard at that, to be a people manager, because I realized you can't do anything by yourself.
Yeah, that's such great advice to people in leadership roles too. Huge. I'm sorry for going back. I'm not super chronological here like I'd like to be, but thinking back to your Mark Martin days, we had JD on a few weeks ago. I was telling you about, he was Mark's tire guy from 02 to 05, the Viagra stint. And he had some things to say about what it was like working with Mark. He said he was super intense, hardworking, would chew you out, but he didn't expect anything out of you that he wouldn't do himself. Does that reign true? What was your experience like with him in the early 90s?
Mark was even more intense in the early 90s. Mark Martin taught me more about race cars than anybody I ever worked with.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Wow. Just on the race cars. He could make every call himself from that seat except fuel mileage, and he'd get you within about 2 or 3 laps on fuel mileage. He was just incredible in the seat, but so intense. We asked him one day, I said, can you name one sports athlete? And he said, I know who Michael Jordan is. And that was it. He didn't follow sports, ball sports, nothing. Absolutely. It was all 100% racing his entire life. And it's funny, the day that I met Mark Martin, my first day working at Roush Racing, he come right up to me. He said, so you're Chris? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, I hear you're going to be my front tire changer. And I said, yes, sir. He said, are you any good? Just like that. And I said, well, I like to think I'm pretty good. Yeah. I said, or they wouldn't have hired me. He said, okay, well, then you'll have to show me.
Yep.
And so I knew right then where I stood with Mark. It's like for him, it's all about performance and it's all about business, and it wasn't personal. But in hindsight, because I've talked to Mark several times since, and we text back and forth every now and then a little bit on some old history stuff. And he, like I said, he taught me the most about race cars of anybody I ever knew. But if I'm disappointed about anything, and Mark would agree, is I don't remember him enjoying any of those wins. It was a relief. He was more relieved than he was happy that he actually won another race. Wow. And he'll tell you that today. And a lot of people have told me that, his 2008, 2009 season, somewhere in there, I guess, they said, gosh, he was just a completely different person because he learned to enjoy it. And whether he knew it was close to the end or what, I don't know, but he learned to enjoy it. But, boy, early on now, it was intense, and there was some trying moments with him, certainly over the radio on the during the race. But, it was just, hey, it wasn't personal. It wasn't directed at you. It was just he just wanted to beat everybody all the time. Just a very, very competitive individual.
That sounds about right. Let's take a quick break here, hear from our presenting partner, Petty's Garage, and we'll regroup. All right, today the Richard Petty Motorsports Podcast is again presented by Petty's Garage.
Petty's Garage is from the mind of Richard Petty himself. Petty's Garage is a haven for any fan of speed.
That's right. Petty's Garage is a full-service speed shop dedicated to continuing the legacy and reputation of the King.
The experts at Petty's Garage provide exceptional engines, tuning, and high-performance parts for you, the enthusiast.
Famous for the high-quality service and craftsmanship, Petty's Garage embodies Richard Petty's passion for being the best.
The best. Whether you're adding on to a current project, upgrading your ride completely, or just need our tuning department to squeeze out that last little bit of power from your engine, you can trust Petty's Garage to give your car performance that the King would be proud of.
That's right. Petty's Garage has you covered, so visit them online right now at pettys-garage.com. So, Chris, I was looking through your...
Yes.
Okay. Other Chris.
Oh, okay.
I'm surprised that's the first confusion we've had this whole time. I was looking through your Instagram page. There's a lot of priceless NASCAR throwback photos that chronicle a lot of your career. So I just want to pull up one. I'm going to flip my laptop around, and I just want you to tell me if you can remember where you're at, who you're with, and kind of what happened. So here's number one.
Okay, yeah, I'm not even in that photo. I was a spotter that day, and that's a good story. We had won the race in the spring that year, and we'd had some outstanding test days up there, and went back and won the race. And of course, everybody's happy. And the leading part of that story was we all get down to Victory Lane in the April race, and everybody's jumping up, down, high-fiving, and the king, he gets me around the neck and immediately tells me everything I did wrong that day. Brought me right down, right down back to where we're supposed to be. And so then you fast forward to the September race, and that photo is from the September race, and John is super fast again, and we're running really good, and go into 3, and the 4 car, I think Bobby Hamilton was probably driving it. They crashed, and I just completely miscalled the crash and felt like I drove John right into it and ruined our day. And we had an outstanding opportunity to win that race, and ruined our day. And I was sick. I mean, I was almost physically sick up on the spotter stand. And so back then there was no tunnel or anything you do to get back to the infield. Right. So they repaired the car and got back in the race, and I was up there about to jump. And I get back down to the infield that day, and I know I had that look on my face, and was a king do. He gets me around the neck and tells me everything I did right that day.
Wow.
And it's that deal that he just keeps you he keeps you level headed all the time. He don't let you get too high. He doesn't let you get too low. And that's one of the things that's made him an outstanding leader through the years. But yeah, whenever I saw that photo and I posted it, that was the story behind it. Is I feel like that's a win. I cost John Andretti, but nobody ever said that except me.
Right.
But that's the way I'll always feel.
Wow. So I read your caption, said Spotter's fault.
Yeah.
And before we started talking, I didn't realize you were Spotter.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, who's he gonna pull up for that one? So that was the same year of John's win, where y'all swept, right? Didn't Jimmy Hensley win the truck race that year?
Yes, on Saturday. Yes.
That's pretty cool. We'll go back to the Mark Martin days.
Yeah, it's a Darlington. Pitting on the backstretch, had qualified horrible, and for some reason, because Mark was an outstanding. No, actually, that is the front stretch. I'm sorry, that's on the front stretch. That's the day we won the Southern 500. In 1993. Had a lot of rain delays, finished almost in the dark. Actually cut the race short, didn't run the full 500 miles. But that's me changing tires on the front. And still to this day, some of my very good friends, Mitch Williams is catching gas there.
Mitch is in that photo?
Yeah.
What?
That's who I bought my truck from.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mitch works out here in the shop with us at Petty's Garage, and he's catching gas, and still really good friends with all those guys in that photo.
Tell you what,
How
that
about
right
that?
there is a good-looking race car.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that race car, to this day, people still say that was my favorite paint scheme ever. It was neat.
I did not realize Mitch was in that photo. I knew this was going to be a good segment. Okay, let's go photo number 3. This looks like a photo shoot.
Oh, boy. That was, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that was my first ever photo shoot. So that was at Bobby Labonte Racing. That's at their shop that they still own today over on Finch Farm Road in Thomasville, North Carolina. And it's myself and Todd Williams, and then the photo crowd to make postcards. And they eventually made a postcard out of that with Bobby, but the stand-in of me and another mechanic there, Todd Williams, who, by the way, works at Hendrick Motorsports today.
Oh, wow.
That was for a Good Mark Foods promotional that they put in some kind of, food trade magazine that had us in it. And they did the whole dry ice smoke, and it's like how exciting can you make Penrose hot sausages? I don't know, but they tried their best, and I actually have a copy of that magazine at home from that photo shoot. But yeah,
oh, cool.
I'll go out on a limb and say that's the first time I did makeup too. So
I had to put it in because I saw the Penrose Firecracker hot sausage big across the hood. And that's like, what a sponsor.
That was 1991. That was the year we won the championship.
Man,
it's only 30 years ago.
Oh, this is a cool one. I don't know anything about this photo.
That screams Days of Thunder to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in
the lighting and everything.
It's in General Motors wind tunnel in Warren, Michigan, and that was probably about 10, maybe 11 p.m. at night. on a cold, snowy night outside in Warren, Michigan in December. That was how we did wind tunnel testing back then. That was the one we went to because we were a Pontiac team at Bill Davis's. Mm-hmm. And I would say that's probably December of '93, before the '94 season. That was the first Pontiac that we built. So that's we just added caps and duct tape, and I got some more photos from that same test session with Bobby Labonte. He was with us, and he went crazy. He got bored, and he went crazy with the yarn and started taping the little tufts of yarn all over the car. And when he got done, it looked like shag carpet. I mean, there was yarn everywhere, but he could see that move in the wind, and that's what he did. But that was we didn't know what we didn't know. If we knew what we knew now, but that's right. That's right when the wind tunnel revolution had really started.
And that's a full size car too.
Oh yeah, no, that's a real race car. That's a car we took to the Daytona 500.
Because a lot of wind tunnels are like half size, quarter size. That one's
yes.
It's full race car.
That's your Daytona 500 car in that photo.
Yes.
Wow, that's such a cool photo.
So do you know what you were doing in that picture?
I was taping that. We were enclosing that wheel opening. You just close them off as tight as you could to the wheels to the tires wouldn't rub anymore.
Was that a super speedway specific thing?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aerodynamics.
Yeah, we couldn't even spell aero then, but we tried really hard.
Oh, this one's a good one too, because it kind of goes back to our earlier story with the king coming up and putting his arm around your neck. Tell us about that one.
Yeah, that's at Indianapolis Raceway Park in 2000, and I have no idea what he was saying, but I know I was listening. Anytime he came around and he walked up that ladder, you just stop what you're doing and you listen out of respect. And it's funny how Kyle used to tell me, say, the king comes around, just don't pay him no attention. How do you not pay the king attention? I said, if he tells you 10 things, regardless if they're from the 60s or 70s, 3 of those things still apply today. It's the common sense thing. People like Richard and Dale, they have so much common sense. It is unbelievable, and they will and they'll surprise you with it every day, and you just sit back and say, man, why didn't I think of that? It's so simple. Where we make things really complicated, they keep them simple. And so it was it was always neat anytime he was around. I have no idea who shot that photo, but I'm really glad they did, because I have a handful like that. I have a couple more like that up on top of the truck and stuff that is good memories.
Do you have anything? Do you? This is putting you on the spot. Do you have any advice you've ever received from Dale or Richard that is in the forefront of your mind, or that you still remember, or am I putting you on the spot too much?
Well, it's too numerous things to mention.
Yeah.
I recite. I'm a big quote person, and y'all have heard me say some, but things that they both say over and over, repetitiously through the years, that I tell these young guys. From Richard saying it, if you don't do it right the first time, if you don't have time to do it right the first time, when will you ever find time to do it right the second time? And it only takes a little bit longer to do it right the first time, and I can sit here and say things like that they told us through the years, that it's like it rang true and it sunk in, and it will always hold true. And like you said, you put me on the spot on just bringing up one thing, but gosh, there's at least 5 times a day out here in this shop today working on streetcars. I will apply, I will say something, I will tell a younger guy something that Richard or Dale or Bob Labonte or Steve Mill or any of these people that I've worked with through the years, that will always ring true in my memory, that it still applies no matter what you're doing in life.
Wow. So you're out here working on street cars now in an old race shop. What do you think the biggest similarities and comparing and contrasting street cars and race cars? Is it more alike than different, or is it 2 totally different worlds?
It's different worlds. It really is. Just because this is a customer-based business, and I say I was coddled in the racing world all those years of not having to deal with the real world. We just worked, and we had our blinders on all the time, and it was about getting the truck loaded on Thursday and about going to compete, and then coming home and figuring out what went wrong on Sunday, whether it was a broken part, whether it was a bad call, whether it was just a bad day, and you had 4 days to get it right and load the truck again, and time just flew, and you just do that. And there needs to be a sense of urgency probably in any business on the face of the earth to turn jobs and turn money and cash flow. But at the same time, I realize out here it doesn't have to be done by Friday at noon. If instead of making a knee-jerk reaction or taking a chance like you would in racing, just wait till Monday. It'll still be here Monday.
Yeah.
And that's really the big thing for me, was just to calm down a little bit, slow down a little bit. But at the same time, that racing it puts that sense of urgency in you. It puts that perfectionist in you that I don't know that you'll ever get out.
Yeah.
That is not required in a lot of other forms of work or businesses. And that's good and bad, because you feel like it needs to be in everything. But my wife, she said, I'll be working on something at home, and she'll say, nobody will ever know the difference. And I say, I will.
Yeah.
I will. So I'm going to make sure it's right. I'm the only person that'll ever see that flaw, but I'm going to fix it because I don't want to see it. So that's what racing does for you. It really does.
Yeah.
I will say, me being here at the garage every day, and a lot of the guys, most of the guys that work here were at one point on a race team.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of perfectionists. I consider myself a perfectionist even before I came here. And there's a lot of tendencies that I have in myself, that I see in myself, that I see in a lot of the guys out here. And it's funny you mentioned perfectionism.
And it's pride. At the end of the day, I call it pride. But those guys, they treat every job at Petty's Garage like it's getting ready to go to Daytona 500, because that's the way they were raised. That's the way. It's not just a job to them. They will, right, wrong, or indifferent, sometimes they'll undo something and redo it because it was perfectly functional like it was. That car would have run 100,000 miles like it was, but it just didn't look right. So they undo it and redo it again. And how do you try to talk to somebody out of that? You don't. It's like you strive for that all the time and have employees to do that. So typically you let them do it.
Yeah, I've our interior guy, Carl, who wraps our side skirts, he keeps coming at me aggravated because I do the paint schemes. And since we wrap the whole car, when you put the wrap on the car, it forms to the contour, so it stretches and shrinks here and there. Mm-hmm. And so when you print it as one big side piece and then you put the wrap on the car and then you go to wrap the side skirts, chances are, if there's a lot of graphics that go through there, they're going to be off about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. Yeah. And he always will come to me and he'd be like, "You did it to me again." I was like, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, you had a stripe up here and a stripe back here, and after they put the wrap on, I can't quite get to line up." And I take about 3 steps back and I was like, "Carl, you can't even tell. The car's going to be going 200 miles an hour." And he goes, "I can tell. I can see."
That's right.
And so,
I like to point it out when I go see some of the race cars. I'll be like, "Hey, Bradley, these lines right here don't add up."
I got the sponsor to approve, got the king to approve. Let's go home and be happy, right?
There's nobody critiques it more than the king will.
That's for sure.
Especially on dimensions and lines and stuff. He'll stand back and he'll pull those glasses down the tip of his nose and he'll check it out.
Mm-hmm. And when I was doing the cars here, because I was here from 17 to 19 or 2 years, and when you're working with a customer, like you're saying, and it's their car, you have a few weeks to go back and forth with them and talk about what they want and go through all their options, and it's quite the process. But in racing, the car's getting wrapped Thursday or Wednesday or whenever, going on the truck Friday, leaving, whether better have something. And it's that sense of urgency. It's there. You can't get rid of it because you got to go race.
It's hard to slow down. It's hard to get it out of you.
I'll finish up with a question I asked Philippe as well. I know you've been out of it for a little bit, and there's probably, looking back, a lot of things, the way the sport has changed, that good, bad, indifferent, who knows. Let's say you could have the reins for one day and make one decision in today's NASCAR world. If Chris Hussey had one thing he could do to change the world of NASCAR today, what would it be?
I'd do away with stage racing. I don't like stage racing. Mm-hmm. If it's about a rule or something that's I understand and respect the cost of racing. I understand the racing aspect and competition aspect and bunching the field back up for passing and overtaking and all those other trick words. But where I come from, it was about strategy. And there's an argument that there's still strategy in stage racing, but to me, stage racing is 3 heat races. Mm-hmm. It's a guaranteed caution, and you know when it's coming. Where we used to run 5-hour, 500-lap races, and you didn't have a clue when the caution was going to come, whether it was a debris caution or a ghost caution or whatever you want to call it. You just didn't know, and so your strategy continuously changed. Now with the stage racing, you're running 3 mini races, and to me, from a crew chief standpoint, from a team, from a strategist standpoint, it just makes it easier. Mm-hmm. And I understand it's done for competition and for the show, so to speak. But that would be my one thing today is I don't like stage racing.
So kind of to play off of that a little bit, what is something about today's racing that you like a lot more than past racing?
Absolutely nothing. I'm going to be perfectly honest. Okay, I'll go down this road. These young guys say, so why do you say racing was so much better back in the day? And they'll throw all these stats at you where there was only one car on the lead lap and the guy finished 5th was 5 laps down. When I say racing was better, I'm not talking about competition. I'm talking about you had 41 car teams. You had 40 head engine builders. And it was a small group. They were all in their region. You had the Wood Brothers in Stewart. You had the Elliots in Dawsonville. You had Junior Dunleavy in Richmond, Bud Moore in Spartanburg, the Pettys in Level Cross. And everybody had their hometown team, that you saw at the movie theater, you saw at the diner, at the local service station. And so you pulled for that team. It didn't matter who drove it. It didn't matter what kind of car what manufacturer they had. You had the hometown team. And I think that's what, really attributed to the growth of NASCAR racing in the South, obviously, was that. But then I even lean on that in 1985, you could line up 5 Chevrolet Monte Carlos, and all 5 of them looked different because you had 3 templates. And you didn't buy speed, you built it, and you had to build the body, and you had that gray area that you could work. And then it comes to exhaust, and guess what? All 5 of those cars sound different. And now everything is so mandated to control cost that they all sound alike, they all look alike, they all fit the same templates, and I'll always say that everybody can't be Richard Petty or Jimmy Johnson or Jeff Gordon. So I felt like then as a team, you could work harder with maybe a younger or less talented driver and still have opportunity for success if you outworked another team. Mm-hmm. Well, when you have all equal cars with equal horsepower and equal aero and equal downforce, they're not going to pass each other. They're all going to run in line, and that's not good for competition. Once again, this is my opinion. I respect NASCAR. I always respect NASCAR. It's the hardest job in the world. Don't want it. I've said many, many times, if I can sit here and talk about it all day, but if they put Chris Hussey in charge, I don't know what I would do.
Right. Yeah.
But I'll never talk bad about them. They gave me a platform to fulfill my dream and build a home and send my kids to school and all the good things. So NASCAR is somebody you'll never hear me badmouth. But at the same time, I don't have the answer for them. But really, it's difficult for me. I'm a traditionalist. I'm a realist, and it's difficult for me to grasp some of the changes that have been made. To call it promote competition or interest or whatever. I guess because I lived it, it just seemed. I'll say it like Dale. It just seems easier nowadays. It hasn't always been this easy. Yeah. Back to the day that first round qualifying was on Thursday, and young guys they'll say, "What's first round qualifying?" Because second round was on Thursday, and then you practiced. On Friday, and then you practiced all day Saturday, and you changed 3 engines, and you did this and you did that, and gosh, we just worked. The garage opened at 6 every single morning. When we raced at Bristol at 8:00 on Saturday night, the garage opened at 6 that morning.
My gosh!
And we practiced and had second round qualifying and took the qualifying engine out, put the race engine in. It's just we we just worked. And in hindsight, you look back and say, how did we do that? We didn't know any better. That's what we were supposed to do, and everybody else was doing it too. So that's what made it so much fun then. I don't know if I could handle getting to the racetrack at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon and stuff like that, but I guess I'd maybe learn a hobby of fish, golf, or something that I never did before.
Yeah. So we got the 500 coming up this weekend. Who you got?
Well, of course, I'm pulling for Eric Jones. I can say that now. So for several years there in racing, people would say, "Who's your favorite driver?" And I said, "I don't like none of them." But even as I was working for him, I said, "I don't like any of them." But boy, yeah.
Have you had a chance to meet Eric yet?
I have not met Eric in person.
Need to make sure y'all link up next time he comes up here. He's a cool cat.
Man, he's awesome.
Yeah, no, everybody speaks really highly of him. Obviously, he's talented, and I can only hope for the best for him. And I look forward to meeting him.
Awesome. Well, we got that coming up this weekend, so kicking off another season. But that was a great way to end the show, I think, there, Chris and Chris. I really appreciate your perspective and taking this time out of your day. I know you got a lot going on, so we really appreciate the time you spent with us to tell some stories and give some insight. I think it's going to be a great listen.
Hopefully we can do it again.
Awesome. Well, thanks, everybody.
Yep, thank you.
All right, it was great having Chris on the podcast today. Really appreciate his time and all the great stories he had to share. And thank you for listening to the RPM podcast presented by Petty's Garage. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube, also Apple Podcast and Spotify, and let us know what you think.
Yeah, hop into those comments and ask some questions. If you want to hop onto Twitter, use hashtag AskRPM. That's hashtag AskRPM. And if you guys ask some good questions, we'll ask them on air.
Yeah.
And,
Yep, definitely.
Let's get some engagement going.
Yep. Remember, we are RP Motorsports on Twitter, so hit us up, follow along, make sure you subscribe, tell your friends.
Yeah.
And we appreciate your support.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.